You think your life is being ruined by one big enemy, one betrayal, one heartbreak, one bad year. No, it's smaller than that, filthier than that, quieter than that. It's 100 tiny psychological traps wrapped in normal life, normal faces, normal routines, normal little lies you stopped questioning because they arrived dressed like duty, love, politeness, survival. You wake up tired, grab the phone, let other people's noise enter your skull before your own thoughts can stand up straight, and then you call that a day. You answer messages you don't even respect, laugh at jokes you don't even like, say, "It's okay," when it burns, say, "I'm fine," when your chest feels like a locked room, say, "later" to your own life, as if later has signed a contract with you. Listen to me. The trap is not only what hurts you. The trap is what trains you to cooperate with what hurts you. The guilt that keeps you available, the shame that keeps you quiet, the fake urgency that keeps you reacting, the fake comfort that keeps you numb, the craving for approval that keeps you bending until you don't even recognize the shape of your own spine anymore. That's the ugly part, isn't it? You were not always defeated by force. Sometimes you were defeated by habit, by softness, by delay, by maybe tomorrow. Hidden traps do not crash into your life with sirens. They slide in through your mouth, your routine, your excuses, your need to be loved, your fear of being called difficult. And if you do not break them, they will not just waste your time, they will quietly turn you into a stranger to yourself. The first trap is the need to be liked by people who have never paid the price to guide your life. Look at you. You adjust your tone for people who gossip. You soften your truth for people who disappear the second you stop entertaining them. You make yourself smaller in a room full of people who would not carry your pain for 5 minutes, not 5 minutes. But somehow, their opinion still sits on your chest like a landlord collecting rent. You call it being mature. Sometimes, it is just fear wearing a clean shirt. Think about the ordinary scenes. A family table where you nod to avoid tension, even though the same old disrespect keeps repeating. A workplace where you pretend not to notice the person who smiles at you in meetings and cuts your name out of opportunities the moment your back turns. A group chat where you keep posting jokes so nobody notices you feel invisible. That is not connection. That is performance. The trap is not that they expect it. The trap is that you got used to paying for temporary acceptance with permanent self-betrayal. You know the sound of it. Don't make it awkward. Be the bigger person. It's not worth the drama. Convenient little phrases. Translation: stay easy to use. Stay soft to step on. Stay smiling so nobody has to confront what they are doing to you. And when you finally feel exhausted, when you finally feel that dry bitterness in your throat because you are giving language, attention, labor, warmth, patience to people who treat your presence like furniture, you start blaming yourself for being too sensitive. No, you are not crazy. You are overexposed. The person trapped by approval is never free, because even in silence, even alone, he is rehearsing imaginary conversations with imaginary judges. Break that. Let some people misunderstand you. Let some people call you cold because you stopped bleeding politely. Let some faces change. Better a few offended strangers than a life spent begging to be swallowed whole by people who never intended to respect you. The second trap is fake urgency. The pressure to react before you can think. This one is filthy because it wears the mask of importance. Your phone vibrates, and suddenly your nervous system behaves like the building is on fire. A message comes in with that little sharp tone, and your mind sprints before your wisdom even puts its shoes on. That is control. Not always evil, not always planned like some movie villain nonsense, but real control. People learn your reflexes. Work learns them, family learns them. The world learns how quickly you panic when silence appears. A boss sends a late-night message with no greeting, just "Need this now." A person who ignored you for days suddenly drops, "We need to talk." A relative who never asks how you are calls only when there is a problem. See the pattern? Your body gets trained to jump, to rush, to explain, to patch, to rescue, to over-answer. And the more you live in reaction, the less you live in direction. You start calling anxiety responsibility. Cute. Tragic, but cute. You are not a fire extinguisher for everybody's poor planning, emotional chaos, and convenient emergencies. The trap is not just speed. It is loss of authorship. When every ding, every frown, every shift in tone can reorder your inner world, then your peace no longer belongs to you. Look at what fake urgency steals from ordinary people. It steals fathers from their children because the phone owns dinner. It steals sleep from young men because one cold message from one inconsistent woman poisons the whole night. It steals focus from decent workers because they spend the day anticipating another interruption instead of building something clean, something lasting. It steals prayer-like stillness from the soul and replaces it with twitching, checking, refreshing, defending. Real urgency is rare. Manufactured urgency is everywhere. Learn the difference. If it is truly important, it can survive 10 measured breaths. If it is truth, it can survive your calm. If somebody loses respect for you because you refuse to panic on command, then respect was never what they were offering in the first place. The third trap is shame. Old shame, inherited shame, private shame, the kind that makes you keep serving a version of yourself that should have been buried years ago. This one is cruel because it hides under memory. Somebody mocked you once, and now you still speak smaller than your actual mind. Somebody abandoned you once, and now you confuse attention with love. Somebody humiliated you in school, at home, at work, in front of cousins, in front of strangers, and your nervous system built a little prison and called it personality. You say, "I'm just not that kind of person." Are you sure? Or are you just protecting an old wound from being seen again? Look at the street-level reality of it. A man with skill stays broke because every time he's about to market himself, speak clearly, ask for the rate he deserves, his throat tightens with some ancient fear of being laughed at. A woman with intelligence keeps choosing half-present people because deep down she thinks being tolerated is safer than being truly seen. A son keeps nodding through disrespect because years ago speaking honestly was punished, so now even adulthood feels like borrowed permission. Shame teaches you to negotiate against yourself before life even gets the chance. Efficient little parasite, isn't it? It doesn't even need new evidence. It survives on repetition. And the ugliest part? Shame can make you loyal to the very conditions that keep you weak. You keep the same lazy friends because they knew the broken version of you. You keep the same dirty habits because they match the story you have been telling yourself. I'm complicated. I'm damaged. I'm just like this. No. Stop romanticizing unhealed patterns. Pain is not a personality. Hesitation is not depth. Self-neglect is not mystery. Sometimes you are not finding yourself. Sometimes you are hiding behind old injuries because if you really stood up, really changed, really spoke with force, really became disciplined, then you would have to admit how many years were lost kneeling to ghosts. Shame survives in secrecy and performance. It weakens when dragged into daylight by action. Small action, repeated action, ugly, honest action. Say the thing cleanly. Ask the question directly. Leave what keeps making you crouch. Build evidence that the old humiliation no longer has authority. You do not owe eternal obedience to a wound just because it arrived early. The fourth trap is comfort that is not comfort at all. Numbness dressed like relief. This one is everywhere because modern life sells sedation like kindness. You feel pain, so you scroll. You feel pressure, so you snack. You feel loneliness, so you flood your ears with noise. You feel inadequacy, so you disappear into fantasy, gossip, random videos, endless commentary, cheap dopamine, pointless arguments, false starts, dramatic plans with no structure behind them. And because nothing explodes immediately, you call the behavior harmless. Harmless. Harmless things do not quietly drain the discipline out of your bones. Harmless things do not steal 4 years while convincing you it was just one rough season. Real comfort restores you. Fake comfort postpones you. Learn that difference, or you will die in installments. See how ordinary it looks. A man comes home tired, tells himself he deserves a little break, and every night the break becomes a burial site for ambition. A student says he works better under pressure, but what he really means is that he only knows how to function with panic at his throat because he has trained himself to need chaos before movement. A wife says she is just preserving peace, but what she is really preserving is a household where her silence is always cheaper than everybody else's growth. A young woman says she is resting, but the rest never strengthens her, never clarifies her, never produces anything except another day of soft exhaustion and inward disgust. That aftertaste matters. The body knows the difference between restoration and avoidance. After true rest, there is lightness. After fake comfort, there is heaviness, fog, guilt, self-contempt, that gross little sentence in the head, why did I do that again? Because the trap was never pleasure. The trap was permission without awareness. Do you understand how many lives are controlled not by tyrants, not by catastrophe, but by tiny, repeated acts of self-abandonment? Alarm snoozed, hard call postponed, honest conversation delayed, cheap stimulation chosen over meaningful effort. Little by little, you stop trusting yourself. And when self-trust dies, everything gets darker. You become easy to manipulate, because a person who cannot govern his impulses will always rent himself out to the nearest distraction. Break fake comfort by making your relief tell the truth. Walk, breathe, read something that sharpens you. Sit in silence until the craving reveals what it was hiding. Sleep properly, work with structure, cry if you need to, pray inside your own conscience if you need to, but do not call sedation healing. One of them rebuilds you, the other keeps you soft enough to control. The fifth trap is emotional outsourcing, letting other people's moods, approval, attention, and instability decide who you get to be today. This one breaks strong people because it disguises itself as empathy. You tell yourself you care deeply, that you are just sensitive, that you just feel things intensely. Maybe. But maybe you also never learned the difference between compassion and possession, between being present and being absorbent, between loving people and surrendering your whole nervous system to every weather change in their face. Look at the small daily scenes. Your morning is fine until one cold text arrives. Then suddenly your appetite changes. Your posture changes, your work quality changes. The whole day bends around one person's mood, like your life is an unpaid intern in their emotional office. A parent calls sounding disappointed, and now your chest carries a weight that does not even belong to your actual choices. A friend goes distant for a day, and you do not merely notice it, you become it. You rehearse, decode, imagine, overread, underbreathe, and by evening, you are exhausted from conversations that never even happened. That is not depth. That is captivity with poetic language slapped on top. The person controlled by other people's temperature can never hold his own climate. And you know who senses this fastest? Users, drainers, inconsistent people. The kind who do not need to attack you because they know they can flicker and make you chase. They do not need to insult you because one withheld reply can keep you mentally kneeling for 8 hours. What a system. Minimal effort from them, full emotional taxation from you. In families, it becomes guilt. In romance, it becomes obsession. In friendship, it becomes one-sided loyalty. In work, it becomes overperformance. The tragic little dance where you keep trying harder for the boss who has already decided your worth based on usefulness, not humanity. And then you wonder why you feel drained all the time. Because you are running a city on stolen electricity. None of it is coming from your center. You are trying to live from reactions, from signals, from tone changes, from crumbs, from digital eye contact, from whether the room clapped loudly enough. No wonder your peace feels unstable. You built it on moving faces. There is a mature way to care. It does not require surrender. It notices without dissolving. It loves without auditioning. It supports without collapsing. It listens without making another person's chaos the operating system of your own mind. Learn to separate fact from atmosphere. Somebody being tense is not automatically your fault. Somebody withdrawing is not automatically a sign you failed. Somebody being disappointed does not automatically make you wrong. Somebody being loud does not automatically make them true. The trap survives because you were trained, maybe by home, maybe by love, maybe by old fear, to read shifts in mood like survival codes. When adults around you were unpredictable, you became a little emotional detective. Smart child, tragic skill. Useful once, deadly later. Because now you walk into every room already scanning, already adjusting, already calculating. You call it awareness. Sometimes it is just a bruise with excellent pattern recognition. Break it. Let people have their moods without renting your soul. Let them be disappointed. Let them be unclear. Ask direct questions. Refuse to overinterpret silence. Refuse to overpay for crumbs. Refuse to become a hostage to expressions, typing dots, delayed greetings, half-warm bodies, half-present minds. You were not born to live as an emotional thermostat for people who never learned self-control. The sixth trap is guilt disguised as loyalty, and this one has buried more potential than failure ever could. Because failure at least looks like loss. False loyalty looks like virtue. It wears family language, moral language, cultural language, soft, tragic language. After all we've done for you, don't forget where you came from. You've changed. We miss the old you. Be humble. Why are you acting better than everyone? Hear the manipulation? Not always intentional, no, not always some evil mastermind in a dark room. Sometimes it is just ordinary, wounded people trying to keep the system familiar, because your growth threatens the version of reality where they remain comfortable. A son starts building discipline, and suddenly lazy relatives call him arrogant because he no longer laughs at the same dead jokes for 4 hours and wastes his whole weekend in emotional smoke. A daughter learns to say no, and now she is cold, ungrateful, hard to talk to, because access was mistaken for intimacy. A husband stops apologizing for every boundary and gets labeled difficult because the household was built on his compliance, not his dignity. A friend begins taking work seriously, sleeping seriously, protecting time seriously, and the old circle calls him fake because his seriousness exposes their decay. That is the trap, confusing betrayal with differentiation. You think becoming harder to use means becoming cruel? It does not. Sometimes it means you finally stopped financing dysfunction with your softness. And let's be honest, some of you are terrified of outgrowing the people who raised you, fed you, knew you when you were weak, held you when you were small. I understand that. That pain is real, The heart does not enjoy separating gratitude from submission, but it must. It must. Because gratitude without boundaries turns into lifelong emotional debt, and emotional debt makes cowards out of decent people. You start saying yes to preserve peace, but the peace is fake. You start hiding your standards to preserve closeness, but the closeness is fake. You start shrinking your language, your ambition, your schedule, your beliefs, your discipline, your routines, your seriousness, all so nobody feels left behind. And before long, you are living a smaller life to protect other people from the mirror your growth puts in front of them. That is not love. Love does not require your self-erasure as proof of loyalty. Love can grieve your change and still respect it. Love can miss old access and still bless new discipline. Love can feel the distance and still refuse to call your evolution betrayal. Think about the ordinary phrases that keep people trapped. Just this once. It's family. Don't be so harsh. You know how they are. Let it go. Ah, yes, let it go. Translation, you absorb the cost because nobody else intends to grow. No, sometimes the mature thing is not to let it go. Sometimes the mature thing is to name it correctly, limit it cleanly, and stop handing your future to a pattern just because the pattern has old pictures with you in it. I have seen people spend 10, 15, 20 years being good while resentment quietly rotted their insides because every honest boundary felt like sin to them. So they stayed, they smiled, they helped, they swallowed. They kept answering the late calls, lending the money, solving the drama, carrying the weak men, calming the loud women, babysitting the chaos, translating everyone's emotions, cleaning up everybody's consequences. And they called that kindness. Sometimes it was fear of disapproval with holy makeup on it. You can honor people without obeying their dysfunction. You can be respectful without becoming available for harm. You can be grateful without becoming governable. That sentence right there, some of you needed that 10 years ago. The trap gets uglier when guilt starts speaking inside your own voice. Then nobody even has to pressure you anymore. You pressure yourself. You feel guilty for resting, guilty for charging fairly, guilty for being hard to access, guilty for not answering immediately, guilty for protecting your mornings, guilty for letting people sit with the consequences of their own laziness instead of rescuing them like some exhausted little martyr. And people love martyrs, don't they? Love them. As long as the martyr remains useful. But a living human with standards, a living human who says, no, that doesn't work for me, suddenly everyone is confused. Suddenly, your tone is the topic. Suddenly, your delivery is the emergency. Notice that. When control weakens, attention shifts from the behavior to your reaction. That is another trap nested inside the first one. Refuse it. Bring the issue back to the issue. Stop defending your right to have a spine. Speak cleanly. Repeat less. Explain once, maybe twice if there is good faith, then step back and let reality teach what your words cannot. And yes, it will hurt. The body hates disappointing familiar people. The old programming will scream. You may feel like you were doing violence when all you did was stop volunteering for slow self-destruction. Endure that feeling. Do not worship it. Feel it and move. Because some guilt is not moral truth. Some guilt is just withdrawal pain from a role that was killing you. The seventh trap is status addiction. The hunger to be seen as impressive rather than to become unshakably real. This one is poison because society rewards the costume first. The polished voice, the curated image, the clever caption, the dramatic announcement, the expensive illusion, the smile in public, the collapse in private. Street version? A lot of people do not want peace, skill, truth, patience, integrity, clean habits, or a stable soul. They want the look of those things. They want the body without the discipline, the respect without the character, the admiration without the sacrifice, the authority without the accountability. They want to post the quote instead of living it. They want to be called deep while never sitting alone long enough to hear their own shallowness echo back. And because the world is loud and distracted, the trap works. The office promotes the smoother liar over the quieter builder. The family praises the loud achiever while ignoring the disciplined one whose life is actually clean. The internet throws attention at performance, and attention is a cheap drug. It makes mediocre people feel chosen. So you start drifting. You stop asking what is true and start asking what looks strong. You stop asking what builds me and start asking what gets a reaction. That is how souls get sold in installments. Not always to money, sometimes to image, sometimes to applause, sometimes to the fantasy that if enough people admire you, the ache inside will finally kneel. It doesn't kneel, it just gets better lighting. Think about how this trap controls ordinary lives. A young man buys what he cannot afford because looking established matters more to him than actually building stability. A woman stays in a dead relationship because leaving would disrupt the image of success she has been performing for everybody else. A worker says yes to every visible task and neglects the silent foundational work that would really sharpen his craft, because he is addicted to being witnessed, not transformed. Status addiction makes you vulnerable to humiliation, because anything that can be externally granted can be externally removed. That is why some of the loudest people are the most fragile. Their confidence is rented. Their dignity is sponsored. Their self-respect rises and falls with invitations, replies, glances, numbers, titles, compliments, followers, rumors, seating arrangements, how warmly they were greeted in the room. That is slavery in formal clothing. The trap becomes psychological when you start performing even in private. You are alone, yet still imagining an audience. Even your healing becomes theater. Even your pain becomes branding. Even your silence becomes strategic. You stop living from conscience and start living from anticipated perception. That is a haunted way to exist. Because what happens when the room goes quiet? What happens when the title leaves? What happens when the beauty fades, the trend changes, the applause moves to somebody younger, louder, newer, cheaper, easier? If there is no real core underneath, the crash will sound like truth finally collecting what performance borrowed. Break the trap by loving invisible standards. Clean work when nobody is praising it. Restraint when nobody is rewarding it. Discipline when nobody is watching. A body that functions. A mind that can focus. A tongue that does not overpromise. A room that is orderly. A schedule with spine. Money handled with maturity. Prayer-like silence in the morning. Reading. Training. Honest speech. Late gratification. Those things do not always look glamorous. Good. That is part of their purification. They train you to stop depending on witnesses. And here is the bitter joke. Once you stop chasing image, you often become more formidable to look at, because now the surface is no longer doing all the work. But do not misunderstand me. This is not a speech against excellence, beauty, ambition, leadership, or making money. No. Make money cleanly. Build well. Dress sharply. Speak strongly. Lead if you are fit to lead. But never confuse signal with substance. Never let performance replace structure. Never let vanity hijack your purpose. The trap of status is that it makes you spend your actual life maintaining an edited trailer. For a movie nobody is even watching as closely as you think. And while you are busy polishing the trailer, the real story rots in the dark. So become dangerous in a quieter way. Let your image be the shadow of your habits, not the substitute for them. Let your face say less than your schedule. Let your mouth promise less than your actions deliver. Let your room, your finances, your body, your work, your timing, your boundaries, your speech, your consistency tell the truth before your branding ever tries. That is how you break status addiction. You make being real more addictive than being admired. Then applause becomes optional. Then mockery becomes survivable. Then silence becomes clean. Then you stop living like a salesman trapped inside your own skin. The eighth trap is the addiction to unfinished business. The sick little hunger for closure from people, places, and versions of yourself that have already shown you what they are. This one is dark because it convinces intelligent people to keep returning to what has already been proven. Not because they are stupid, no, because the ego hates unresolved humiliation. It wants the final explanation, the clean confession, the late apology, the sudden realization, the beautiful reversal where the one who ignored you finally understands your worth and the one who mistreated you finally names the damage correctly, and the one who underestimated you finally sees what he lost. Cinema. Lovely. Real life is uglier. A lot of people never become clear enough, honest enough, or humble enough to give you that scene. So you wait. You reread. You reimagine. You check if they viewed the story. You replay the meeting. You search for hidden meaning in the last sentence, the delayed reply, the old smile, the changed posture, the random call after months, the "Hey stranger" that arrives like a thief trying old doors. That is how unfinished business controls people. Not through chains, through loops, through mental re-entry, through emotional reruns, through the fantasy that one more conversation, one more message, one more chance to explain your side will finally give you peace. Sometimes it gives you new humiliation. That's all. Look at the ordinary reality. A man who should be building his future loses 6 months mentally arguing with an ex who already moved on in her nervous system long before she moved on in words. A woman who was publicly disrespected keeps seeking family approval from people whose character is too weak to admit they were cruel. So every holiday becomes another little courtroom where she silently hopes justice will walk in wearing someone else's mouth. An employee leaves a toxic place physically, but not mentally, still composing speeches for the boss, still imagining the perfect comeback, still replaying the meeting where he should have spoken harder. That is not memory. That is captivity by unresolved ego pain. And let me be careful here. Wanting clarity is human. Wanting repair is human. Wanting truth spoken plainly is human. But when the desire for closure starts postponing your movement, poisoning your sleep, stealing your attention, keeping your identity tied to old scenes, it becomes a trap. Because now the person who hurt you still has access. Not to your body, maybe, not to your schedule, maybe, but to your interior. They still collect rent in your mind. One of the hardest adult skills is learning that not every wound gets a satisfying ending. Some endings arrive ugly, incomplete, unfair, asymmetrical. Sometimes you become the only witness of what really happened. Sometimes you are the only court left standing. That hurts, because the child in you still wants someone else to finally say, "You were right. You were hurt. You did not imagine it. They were wrong." I know. But if they never say it, will you stay trapped forever, waiting at the crime scene of your old pain? No. You do not need mutual understanding to take your life back. You do not need the liar to confess before you stop drinking poison. You do not need the neglectful to become wise before you become unavailable. Break the trap by refusing loops. No more decoding random breadcrumbs from people who failed the basic test of consistency. No more building cathedrals of meaning around crumbs, glances, accidental likes, half apologies, nostalgia texts, vague thinking of you messages sent by lonely cowards who miss access more than they miss your soul. Ah, yes, that one lands. People often say they miss you when what they miss is your availability, your softness, your labor, your forgiveness. The way you made their unstable life feel less unstable. Do not confuse being remembered with being valued. Do not confuse being contacted with being honored. Do not confuse someone circling back with someone being transformed. The trap of unfinished business also appears with your own past self. You keep visiting old versions of you with pity, shame, longing, regret. If only I had started earlier. If only I had spoken. If only I had left. Wasteful grief. Understandable, but wasteful if it hardens into paralysis. Grieve quickly, learn slowly, move faithfully. That is cleaner. That is stronger. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is a pattern you stop participating in. Sometimes closure is a number you delete, a route you stop driving, a fantasy you stop feeding, a silent prayer inside yourself, a body that no longer flinches at the same memory because you finally built a life with enough substance to stop bowing before old scenes. The deepest closure is not explanation. It is disinvestment. When the old trigger knocks and finds no altar, no theater, no obsessive detective, no starving ego waiting for one more clue, then the trap begins to starve. Let dead things be dead. Let incomplete endings remain incomplete. Let the lesson be uglier than you wanted. Let the scar be enough evidence. Not everything unfinished deserves more of your life. Some things only survive because you keep breathing into them. The ninth trap is comparison. But not the childish version people talk about with pastel quotes and fake positivity. No. I'm talking about the raw, street-level comparison that turns another person's face into an accusation against your own existence. The trap where somebody else's marriage makes you question your worth. Somebody else's body makes you despise your discipline. Somebody else's income makes your own effort feel invisible. Somebody else's confidence makes you shrink before you have even opened your mouth. Comparison is ugly because it steals context. You compare your behind-the-scenes confusion to somebody else's edited highlight. You compare your chapter of repair to somebody else's chapter of display. You compare your seed to somebody else's harvest and then call yourself late. Efficient way to poison a life. But it gets darker. The real poison is not only envy, it is identity collapse. You start living in reaction to other people's progress instead of relationship to your own calling, your own season, your own structure, your own duties, your own limits, your own opportunities. Then even your goals become contaminated. You do not want what is right. You want what looks victorious from the outside. That is how men end up chasing businesses they do not even respect, bodies they cannot maintain, women they cannot lead, lifestyles they cannot afford, authority they cannot carry. That is how women end up performing beauty they do not enjoy, softness they do not feel, luxury they do not need, relationships they know are hollow. All because comparison turned life into a public exam. Comparison also breeds secret bitterness. You smile at the wedding, the promotion, the announcement, the new house, the success story. But somewhere under the smile, there is a little hard voice saying, "What about me?" That voice shames people because they want to be pure-hearted and generous. And when they notice envy moving inside them, they panic. Listen, envy noticed early is information. Envy hidden and moralized becomes corrosion. Do not lie to yourself with fake nobility. If somebody's progress unsettles you, ask why. Not to become petty, no. To uncover the neglected part of your own life that comparison has exposed. Maybe it reveals laziness, maybe grief, maybe fear. Maybe the fact that you have been wandering without a plan while time passes and everybody else's visible milestones keep slapping your face like public reminders. Good. Use the sting. Do not build a home in it. The trap becomes even more humiliating on the digital street, where you can compare yourself to 1,000 edited lives before breakfast. 1 minute you are sitting in your room, tired but stable, and then you scroll into 10 strangers' vacations, abs, weddings, podcasts, deals, outfits, routines, smiles, babies, bodies, renovations, little miracle moments carefully arranged for display. And suddenly your own honest life looks dull, unfinished, late, unworthy. A screen made you disrespect your own existence in 3 minutes. Remarkable. And because the comparison is constant, you stop building patiently. You want acceleration, visible proof, fast redemption, rapid transformation dramatic enough to silence the internal humiliation of feeling behind. That urgency makes fools easy to sell to, easy to lure, easy to manipulate. They buy fake systems, fake identities, fake mentors, fake relationships, fake hope. Because comparison made them desperate to close a psychological gap. But real building is rarely photogenic. It is repetitive, quiet, embarrassingly basic. Sleep, training, saving, reading, saying no, practicing, leaving what harms you, tolerating being unimpressive for a while. Comparison hates that, because comparison wants emotional drama, not grounded process. So break it ruthlessly. Limit exposure to what triggers hunger without wisdom. Bless others without imitating them blindly. Study what is useful. Ignore what is theatrical. And bring your attention back to measurable standards inside your own actual life. Are you cleaner than 6 months ago? Stronger? More focused? Less available to nonsense? Less frightened of silence? More honest? More disciplined? More respectful of your own time? Those are real victories. Comparison can also infect pain. You start ranking wounds. Maybe I shouldn't complain. Other people had it worse. Stop that. Suffering is not a competition. Neither is healing. The point is not to win the tragedy Olympics. The point is to stop bleeding into your own future because you kept minimizing what needed attention. Another person's pace is not your command. Another person's face is not your judgment day. Another person's success is not evidence of your failure unless you choose paralysis instead of discipline. And remember this ugly truth. Some people look ahead and are miserable. Some people look behind and become proud. Some people look inward and finally begin to live. Choose the third. Let other people's light inspire structure, not self-hatred. Let their success teach you patience, not panic. Let their beauty teach you care, not contempt. Let their courage teach you honesty, not theater. Then comparison loses its teeth. Then another person's rise stops feeling like your burial. Then your path becomes something more sacred, more private, more disciplined than public measuring ever allowed.